My teenage stepdaughter sold my late grandmother's ring and bragged to her friends that I'd never figure it out. But I did, and when I gave out to her, she said in the fakest tone ever, I said I'm sorry, can we drop it now? I just stared at her, because if she wanted to play the petty game, I was more than ready. I told my stepdaughter she could use my family heirloom for a TikTok, and discovered a truth about her I wasn't ready for. It had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandmother used to joke that if I ever found a man like my grandfather who put that ring on her finger the day he came back from the war, I should use it too. It wasn't just jewelry to me, it was legacy. And when I reconnected with Andrew, it felt like fate. We'd dated in college, broken up when our careers split us across the country. 20 years later, we found each other again. Divorced, older, but still drawn to each other. He proposed to me on top of Mount Kilimanjaro with that very ring, and I cried way harder than I expected. Life was perfect, except for one thing. Andrew's 2 daughters, Sophie, who was seemingly sweet and warm to me, and Madison, the blunt 16-year-old who made it clear from the beginning that I wasn't welcome in her home. She rolled her eyes at every compliment I gave, made snide comments about my clothes, and when I brought cupcakes to her school fundraiser, she threw them away and told people I was just a wannabe Pinterest mom. Still, I tried. I wanted us to be a family. I took her shopping, helped with school applications. Even when she said I was trying too hard, I didn't give up. A month before prom, she was venting about her dress. The one she wanted was out of her budget. Her father told her she'd need to pay the difference herself. She pouted, slammed doors, and said it was unfair that I had money, but never offered to help. One night, she came into the living room, teary-eyed, holding the ring box of my grandmother's ring. Can I wear it for a TikTok trend? She asked. I promise I'll be careful. It was the first time she'd ever looked vulnerable. She even called me by my name instead of step monster. So I took it off my finger and said yes. She seemed so happy, hugging me tightly and telling me thank you over and over. She even got me takeout that night. I thought it was so sweet, like that one simple action was about to snowball into a great bond. But of course it wasn't that simple, because the next morning it was nowhere to be found. Madison cried, saying she misplaced it. I searched everywhere for it, but Andrew barely blinked. It's just a ring, he said. I can get you another one. But it wasn't just a ring. I sat on the bathroom floor that night, holding the empty velvet box, staring at it until the light hurt my eyes. I was sad, distraught, crushed. But then 3 days later, I heard Madison laughing on the phone. Yeah, she totally bought it. Stupid cow probably thinks it's sentimental. I sold it yesterday. I didn't move, and then she said it. I'm gonna look so hot in this dress, worth every penny. I remember freaking out. No way had she sold my ring to afford her dress. Wanting to be sure, I tore her room apart after she left for school, and there I found the receipt in her wastebasket. It was for a ring sold to a local pawn shop. I broke down sobbing. Andrew came upstairs and saw me, and I immediately showed it to him. But Andrew just sighed. She's just a kid. She stole from me in the past. She didn't mean to. Yes, she did. We argued for an hour until I realized he wouldn't help, so I went to the pawn shop alone. The guy remembered her, said she called herself Madison Delancey. He handed me the transaction receipt and told me the ring was already gone. Sold. Nothing he could do unless it was reported stolen. I nodded, thanked him, and left. That's when my plan began. I went to the boutique where Madison's dress was being altered, told them I was there to pick it up, used her full name and order number. The clerk didn't even question it, handed it over in a garment bag. I brought it home, hung it neatly in the closet. Then I called the school and volunteered to chaperone prom. Said I was a step-parent, had event experience, happy to help. They were thrilled. The day before prom, Madison tore through the house, screaming, cursing, "Where's my dress?" She turned the place upside down, thinking someone had stolen it. Had a meltdown so loud the neighbors peeked out. In the end, she had to buy one off the rack. It didn't fit quite right, bunched in some places, loose in others. Still, she tried to carry herself like a queen. But then prom night came. I showed up an hour early, name on the chaperone list, hair done, heels on, and walked in wearing her dress. The same dress she'd bought with the money from my grandmother's ring. I stood by the punch table, greeting kids with a smile. When Madison walked in and saw me, she froze. The color drained from her face. Her friends whispered. She looked down at her ill-fitting backup and turned away. I didn't say a word, just smiled. It wasn't about the dress. It wasn't even about the ring anymore. It was about how, if you try to humiliate someone who only ever wanted to love you, eventually, you learn what it feels like to lose. Only, I wasn't done teaching her a lesson just yet. The day after prom, things spiraled further. Andrew and I argued again, and it was clear he wouldn't hold Madison accountable, so I quietly met with a lawyer. She recommended filing a civil suit for theft, suggesting it might finally bring the seriousness of Madison's actions to light. I hesitated briefly, knowing the disruption it might cause, but ultimately agreed. Papers were served to our house, within days, formalizing the charges and setting the wheels of justice into motion. When the papers were served, Andrew's reaction was immediate and defensive. He confronted me in the kitchen, holding the documents like I'd handed him a grenade. "Are you seriously suing my daughter?" he demanded, his voice tight with disbelief. "She stole from me," I reminded him. But Andrew shook his head, as if denial alone could erase the situation. Soon after, we received official notice. Our first court date was scheduled in a month. As soon as that happened, Madison moved in with her mother, Vanessa, taking most of her belongings in a dramatic exit that involved slamming doors and tearful accusations that I was destroying the family. She packed her clothes in garbage bags, dragging them down the stairs while sobbing loudly. Andrew helped carry her boxes to the car, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Sophie stayed with us, quieter than usual, her 10-year-old shoulders carrying the weight of a storm she hadn't created. She spent more time in her room, drawing pictures with dark colors and sharp lines that worried her art teacher enough to call home. "Is Madison going to jail?" she asked one night as I tucked her into bed, her voice small in the darkness. Her stuffed animals were arranged protectively around her, as if forming a barrier against the family chaos. I smoothed her hair back, feeling the silky strands between my fingers. "No, sweetie, this isn't about punishing Madison. It's about making things right." The nightlight cast soft shadows across her worried face. "Dad says you're suing her." Her eyes were wide, reflecting the dim light. "Not exactly," I explained, choosing my words carefully. "We're asking a judge to help us resolve this situation fairly." I pulled her blanket up higher, tucking it around her shoulders the way she liked. Sophie nodded, her eyes serious beyond her years. "Madison told me you're just doing this for money." My heart sank, heavy as a stone. Even from her mother's house, Madison was still spreading poison. This was never about about money, Sophie. It was about respect and honesty. I kissed her forehead, wishing I could shield her from all of this. The harassment began almost immediately after I filed the civil suit. Anonymous texts calling me a home-wrecking bitch. Emails with subject lines like, "Leave our family alone." My phone would buzz at all hours, each message more vicious than the last. Once, someone threw a rock through our living room window with "Home Wrecker" painted on it in dripping red letters. The glass shattered across our carpet, glittering dangerously in the afternoon sunlight. The police came, took reports, photographed the evidence, but without concrete proof linking Madison to these incidents, there was little they could do. My lawyer, Diane Mercer, advised me to keep documenting everything. "This actually strengthens our case," she explained, her voice calm and measured. "It shows a pattern of harassment and intimidation." She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a reputation for being thorough. I installed security cameras around the house, their small red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Andrew changed the locks, his face grim as he handed me a new key. We were living in a fortress of our own making, all because a teenager couldn't admit she'd done something wrong. 2 weeks before our court date, I received a call from the pawn shop. Mr. Ramirez, the owner, sounded excited, his accent thicker than usual. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "The guy who bought your grandmother's ring brought it back. Said his fiancée didn't like the style." My heart raced, hope fluttering in my chest. "You still have it?" I gripped the phone tighter, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. "I do, and I remembered your story. I've set it aside for you." His voice was warm with understanding. I rushed to the pawn shop, the familiar bell jingling as I entered. Mr. Ramirez smiled as I approached, pulling out a familiar velvet box from behind the counter. "It'll cost you what he paid for it," he explained, plus a small restocking fee. It was more than I'd planned to spend, but I didn't hesitate. When I opened the box and saw my grandmother's ring nestled inside, tears sprang to my eyes. The gold gleamed under the shop lights, the tiny diamonds catching and reflecting the light just as I remembered. "Thank you," I whispered, slipping it onto my finger where it belonged, the metal warming against my skin. The familiar weight of it felt like coming home. Mr. Ramirez nodded, his eyes kind. "Family heirlooms should stay in the family." I called Diane immediately. "I got the ring back. Does this change our case?" I was standing outside the pawn shop, the spring breeze ruffling my hair as I spoke. "It changes the damages portion," she explained. "But the theft still occurred. The harassment still occurred. We're proceeding." Her voice was firm, reassuring. When I showed Andrew the ring that evening, he stared at it in silence, his expression unreadable. The kitchen light reflected off the diamonds, casting tiny rainbows on the wall behind him. "I should have taken this more seriously from the beginning," he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry." The words seemed to cost him, each one dragged reluctantly from somewhere deep inside. I squeezed his hand, feeling the first tentative threads of repair between us. "We're going to get through this." I wasn't entirely sure I believed it, but I wanted to. The next day, Vanessa called, her voice honey-sweet in a way that immediately put me on guard. "I think we've all gotten carried away," she said. "Madison's just a teenager. She makes mistakes. Can't we resolve this without courts and lawyers?" I could picture her perfectly. Blonde hair expertly styled, manicured nails tapping impatiently on her desk as she spoke. I was suspicious of this sudden change of heart, the timing too convenient. "What exactly are you proposing?" I paced the kitchen as we talked, unable to stay still. "Madison will apologize. She'll do community service. She'll even get a part-time job to pay you back for the ring." Her tone was reasonable, practiced, as if she'd rehearsed this conversation. "I already got the ring back," I told her, twisting it on my finger as I spoke. The familiar weight of it was comforting, grounding. There was a pause, the silence stretching like taffy. "Oh, well, that's wonderful. Then there's no need for this lawsuit to continue, is there?" The sweetness in her voice had an edge now, like honey laced with vinegar. I thought about the broken window, the threatening messages, the police reports, the social media posts calling me a gold digger, the sleepless nights and Sophie's worried eyes. "This stopped being just about the ring a long time ago, Vanessa." Her voice hardened, the sweetness evaporating. "You're really going to drag a teenager through court? What kind of stepmother are you?" The accusation hit its mark, making me flinch despite myself. "The kind who believes in consequences," I replied, ending the call with a decisive tap. My hand was shaking slightly as I set the phone down on the counter. That evening, Madison showed up at our door, her usual confident swagger replaced by hesitant steps. She looked different, smaller somehow, her usual armor of designer clothes replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. Her makeup was minimal, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of her usual elaborate style. Andrew let her in cautiously, his body tense as if preparing for battle. The living room felt too small suddenly, the air heavy with unspoken words. "I came to apologize," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "What I did was wrong. I shouldn't have taken the ring." Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sweater, pulling at a loose thread. It was the apology I'd wanted for months, but something felt off. Her delivery was too rehearsed, her contrition too sudden, like an actress who hadn't quite mastered her lines. The words were right, but the feeling behind them was missing. "Thank you for saying that," I replied carefully. The clock on the mantel ticked loudly in the silence that followed. "So we can drop all this court stuff now, right?" She looked up hopefully, a flash of the old Madison peeking through. I said I'm sorry. Her tone suggested that the words alone should be enough to erase everything that had happened. And there it was. Not genuine remorse, just a transaction. An apology in exchange for dropping the lawsuit. The calculation was so transparent it was almost painful to witness. "Madison, an apology is a good start," I said, "but it doesn't erase everything that's happened." I kept my voice gentle, not wanting to escalate the situation. Her face darkened, storm clouds gathering. "Mom said you'd be like this. She said you just want to punish me." The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the familiar hostility. "This isn't about punishment," Andrew interjected, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in weeks. "It's about accountability." He stood straighter, no longer the defeated man who had helped load her things into Vanessa's car. Madison's eyes filled with tears, perfectly timed. "Daddy, please, if this goes to court, it could affect my college applications, my whole future." She reached for his arm, her expression pleading. Andrew wavered, his resolve softening at the sight of his daughter's tears. "Maybe we should consider—" "No," I said firmly. "We've tried handling this privately. We've tried talking. We've tried consequences at home. None of it worked. The court date stands." My voice was calm but unyielding. Madison's tears vanished instantly, replaced by cold fury that transformed her face. "You'll regret this," she hissed. hissed, storming out and slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The sound echoed through the house, followed by the screech of tires as she drove away. That night, someone slashed the tires on my car. Our security camera caught a hooded figure, face obscured, but the build matched one of Madison's friends, Tiffany. The rubber was cut in jagged lines, the car listing sadly to one side in our driveway. The police took another report, adding it to the growing file. The day before court, Andrew received a call from Madison's school counselor, Mrs. E. Patel. Madison had apparently told her that she was being forced to go to court by her abusive future stepmother, and that she was considering self-harm because of the stress. The counselor sounded concerned but professional, explaining that she was required to report such statements. Andrew was shaken, his face pale as he told me. What if we're pushing her too far? He asked that night, pacing our bedroom. What if she actually hurts herself? The moonlight cast long shadows across the floor as he moved back and forth. That's manipulation, Andrew, I said gently. She's trying to use your love and concern against you. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him wear a path in the carpet. But what if it's not? What if she's really struggling? His voice cracked with worry, his hands running through his hair until it stood on end. I took his hands in mine, feeling the slight tremor in his fingers. Then we get her help, real help, but dropping the lawsuit won't solve the underlying issues. I pulled him to sit beside me, the mattress dipping under our combined weight. The morning of court, I dressed carefully in a conservative navy suit, my hair pulled back in a neat bun. Andrew wore his best tie, his movements stiff with tension. Sophie stayed with a friend. We'd all agreed court was no place for her. The house was quiet as we prepared, each of us lost in our own thoughts. We arrived early, meeting Diane in the lobby. She briefed us on what to expect, but paused mid-sentence when she saw my expression change. I was staring past her, at Madison and Vanessa entering the building. Madison was in a wheelchair, her right leg in a cast, looking pale and fragile. Her hair was pulled back simply, her makeup minimal, emphasizing her youth and vulnerability. What happened to her? Andrew asked, rushing over. His concern was immediate, parental instinct overriding everything else. Vanessa gave him a cold look, her perfectly manicured hand resting protectively on Madison's shoulder. She fell down the stairs yesterday. The doctor says it's stress-induced vertigo from all this legal pressure. Her accusatory tone made it clear who she blamed for the accident. I exchanged glances with Diane, who raised an eyebrow skeptically. The timing was too convenient, the presentation too perfect. Inside the courtroom, Madison's appearance had the desired effect. The judge, an older woman named Judge Harmon, looked sympathetic as Madison wheeled herself to the plaintiff's table, wincing dramatically with every movement. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, the wooden benches polished from years of use, the air slightly stuffy despite the ceiling fans turning lazily overhead. Vanessa had hired an aggressive attorney named Richard Dawson, who painted me as a jealous, vindictive woman targeting a vulnerable teenager. He emphasized Madison's stellar academic record, her community involvement, and how this lawsuit could derail a promising young life. His voice resonated through the courtroom, commanding attention with practiced ease. When it was Diane's turn, she methodically presented our evidence: the pawnshop receipt, the security footage, the threatening messages, the police reports, and statements from witnesses including Sophie and Mr. Ramirez. She was thorough and precise, laying out the facts without emotional embellishment. Your Honor, Diane concluded, her voice clear and confident, this case is about more than a stolen ring. It's about a pattern of theft, deception, harassment, and defamation that has escalated over months. She gestured to the stack of evidence on the table, the physical manifestation of Madison's campaign against me. Madison testified next, her voice quavering as she claimed she'd misunderstood when I let her borrow the ring. I thought it was a gift, she said, her eyes wide with practiced innocence. A peace offering. I didn't realize it was so important. She fidgeted with the blanket covering her legs, the picture of youthful vulnerability. And the threatening messages? Judge Harmon asked, peering over her glasses. Her expression was neutral, giving nothing away. Madison's eyes widened. I would never do something like that. It must have been someone pretending to be me. She looked genuinely shocked at the suggestion, her performance flawless. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke calmly about finding the pawn shop receipt, about Madison's admission on the phone that she'd sold the ring, about the escalating harassment. The wooden witness chair was uncomfortable, but I sat straight, meeting the judge's eyes as I answered each question. Why pursue this in court? Judge Harmon asked me directly. Why not handle it within the family? Her tone was curious rather than judgmental. We tried, Your Honor, I replied, but the behavior continued to escalate. Madison has never shown genuine remorse or taken responsibility for her actions. I could feel Madison's glare from across the courtroom, but I kept my focus on the judge. During cross-examination, Richard Dawson tried to portray me as obsessed with material possessions, more concerned about a ring than my relationship with my future stepdaughter. He paced as he questioned me, his expensive shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. Isn't it true, he asked, his voice sharp as a blade, that you wore Madison's prom dress to humiliate her in front of her peers? He stood too close, invading my personal space in a subtle intimidation tactic. I took a deep breath, feeling all eyes on me. Yes, I did. It wasn't my finest moment. I was hurt and angry that she'd sold my grandmother's ring to buy that dress. The admission felt both freeing and uncomfortable. So you admit to deliberately humiliating a teenager? His tone suggested he'd scored a significant point. I admit to showing her that actions have consequences, I replied, something no one else in her life seemed willing to do. From the corner of my eye, I saw Andrew shift in his seat. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Andrew pulled me aside, his voice low and urgent. Madison's leg isn't broken, he whispered. Sophie texted me. She said Madison was bragging to her friends about faking an injury for court. His eyes were wide with disbelief. I stared at him. How would Sophie know that? The hallway was crowded with people, forcing us to stand close together as we spoke. Apparently, Madison didn't realize Sophie was in a group chat with some of her friends. She saw the messages. He showed me his phone, where Sophie had sent screenshots of the conversation. When court resumed, Diane asked to recall Madison to the stand. Judge Harmon agreed, looking curious. The courtroom had grown warmer as the day progressed, the air conditioning struggling to keep up with the number of people present. Madison, Diane began, can you tell us exactly how you injured your leg? She stood at the podium, her expression neutral. Madison launched into a detailed story about falling down the stairs at her mother's house due to dizziness from stress. She described the pain, the trip to the emergency room, the doctor's diagnosis. Her performance was convincing, complete complete with winces when she shifted in her seat. And when did this happen? Diane's tone gave nothing away. Yesterday afternoon, around 4. Madison's voice was confident, assured. Diane nodded, then held up her tablet. Your Honor, I'd like to submit a new piece of evidence. These are screenshots from a group chat that includes Madison and several of her friends. She approached the bench, handing the device to the judge. Madison's face went pale, the color draining so quickly I thought she might faint. Her eyes darted to her mother, then to her lawyer, panic replacing the composed vulnerability she'd maintained throughout the proceedings. In these messages, sent yesterday evening, Madison brags about faking an injury to gain sympathy in court. She even includes a photo of herself applying the fake cast. Diane's voice remained professional, but there was an undercurrent of satisfaction as she presented the evidence. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Harmon called for order, her expression thunderous. The gavel struck the sound block with a sharp crack that silenced the room instantly. Is this true, young lady? She demanded. The kindness that had been in her eyes earlier was gone, replaced by stern disapproval. Madison looked around wildly, then burst into tears. Everyone's against me. No one understands what I've been through. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Judge Harmon was not moved. I understand perfectly what's happening here. You've lied to this court, which is perjury, a serious offense. Her voice was cold, cutting through Madison's theatrics. The rest of the hearing was a blur of legal terms and stern pronouncements. Judge Harmon ruled entirely in our favor, ordering Madison to pay restitution for the ring, despite its return, the property damage, and our legal fees. She also mandated therapy and community service. The gavel struck again, finalizing the judgment with a sound that seemed to echo through the now silent courtroom. But the most damning part was her closing statement. Young lady, you have demonstrated a disturbing pattern of dishonesty, manipulation, and disrespect for others. If you don't change course now, you're heading for a difficult future. The words hung in the air, their weight almost tangible. Outside the courthouse, Vanessa wouldn't look at us. Madison, miraculously able to walk now, stormed ahead to the car. Her cast had been removed, revealing an unmarked leg beneath. Andrew looked shell-shocked. I can't believe she faked an injury, lied under oath. The spring sunshine seemed too bright, too cheerful for the gravity of what had just happened. I said quietly. This is who she's become. The realization was sad rather than satisfying. That evening, as we sat in our living room processing the day's events, Andrew's phone rang. It was Vanessa, sobbing. Madison's gone, she cried. She packed a bag and left. There's a note saying she's going to live with her boyfriend. She says everyone's turned against her. Her voice was high-pitched with panic. Andrew went pale. What boyfriend? She's 17. He gripped the phone tighter, knuckles turning white. Some college guy she met online. Jason or Justin, something like that. I've been calling her, but she won't answer. Vanessa's voice cracked with genuine fear. I watched the color drain from Andrew's face as he realized how little he knew about his daughter's life, how many secrets she'd been keeping, how dangerous her current actions might be. The evening shadows lengthened across the living room floor as we absorbed this new crisis. We'll find her, he promised, ending the call. He looked at me, fear replacing the anger and disappointment of the day. What have we done? His voice was hollow with self-recrimination. I took his hand. We held her accountable. That's what parents are supposed to do. I tried to sound more confident than I felt. And now she's run away with some guy we know nothing about. He ran his free hand through his hair, a gesture that had become familiar during these weeks of stress. I nodded, already reaching for my phone. Then we find her and bring her home. That's also what parents do. I started making calls, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. The court victory suddenly felt hollow. We'd won the battle, but possibly lost something much more important in the process. Madison was out there somewhere, angry, humiliated, and potentially in danger. The real challenge was just beginning. We spent the next 48 hours in a nightmare of police reports, phone calls, and social media searches. Andrew contacted Madison's friends, but they either didn't know where she was or weren't telling. Vanessa called hospitals and shelters. I scoured Madison's social media accounts for any clues about this mysterious boyfriend. The hours blurred together, marked only by cups of cold coffee and increasingly desperate phone calls. I found something, I said, showing Andrew a photo Madison had posted 3 weeks earlier. It showed her sitting on a campus bench with a guy's arm around her shoulders, though his face was cropped out. The caption read, "College life with Bae is going to be amazing." The geotag showed Eastern State University, about 2 hours away. My eyes burned from staring at screens, but the discovery sent a surge of adrenaline through me. That's Justin Mercer's sweatshirt, Sophie said, peering over my shoulder. He graduated last year. He's in college now. She pointed to the distinctive logo on the sleeve visible in the photo. Andrew's head snapped up. How do you know him? His voice was sharp with concern. Sophie shrugged. He used to pick Madison up from school sometimes. Mom didn't know. She twisted her fingers together nervously, aware she was revealing something significant. Armed with a name and location, Andrew called the campus police. They agreed to check Justin's dorm room but couldn't share information without a formal missing persons report, since Madison had left voluntarily. The officer's voice was sympathetic but firm about the limitations of what they could do. She's 17, Andrew argued. She's still a minor. His frustration was palpable as he paced the kitchen. For 3 more weeks, the officer reminded him. Madison's 18th birthday was approaching fast. The calendar on the refrigerator had the date circled in red, a reminder of the celebration we'd planned before everything fell apart. While we waited for news, Andrew paced the living room, alternating between worry and anger. How did I miss this? How did I not know she had a college boyfriend? His self-recrimination was painful to witness. She didn't want you to know, I said gently. Madison's gotten very good at hiding things. I brought him a cup of tea he wouldn't drink, the steam rising between us like the questions neither of us could answer. His phone rang. Vanessa. Her voice was so loud I could hear her without speakerphone. This is all your fault, she shouted. If you hadn't dragged her to court, humiliated her, the accusations poured out in a torrent of blame and fear. Stop, Andrew interrupted. Madison chose to steal. She chose to lie. She chose to run away. We need to find her, not blame each other. His voice was steady, resolute in a way I hadn't heard before. After he hung up, he looked at me with tired eyes. I've been a terrible father. The admission seemed to age him, the lines around his eyes deeper in the harsh kitchen light. No, I said firmly. You've been a father who wanted to believe the best about his daughter. There's a difference. I squeezed his hand, trying to convey strength I wasn't sure I possessed. Late that night, Andrew's phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. her. Dad, I'm fine. Stop looking for me. I'll be 18 soon anyway. The message was terse, devoid of emotion, but at least it confirmed she was alive. Andrew called the number immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. The police traced it to a prepaid phone purchased with cash. Another dead end. We went to bed exhausted, the house too quiet without Madison's drama filling the spaces. On day 3, Sophie came to me with her tablet. I think I know how to find Madison. Her expression was serious, determined beyond her years. She opened Instagram and showed me a private account called ESU_Party Central that posted photos from campus parties. In the background of one image posted the night before, barely visible in the corner, was Madison. Her distinctive auburn hair was unmistakable, even in the dimly lit photo. That's Justin's apartment, Sophie explained. I recognized the weird painting on the wall from Madison's Snapchat stories. She pointed to an abstract canvas visible behind the partygoers. I hugged her tight. You're brilliant, Sophie. Her small body felt fragile in my arms, but her mind was sharp and observant. We showed Andrew, who immediately called the police with the new information. They agreed to do a welfare check, but warned it might take time. The officer sounded sympathetic, but explained they had limited resources, and a 17-year-old runaway who had made contact wasn't their highest priority. I'm not waiting, Andrew said, grabbing his keys. I'm going there myself. His jaw was set with determination. We're going, I corrected, already reaching for my coat. The decision was instant, automatic. Where he went, I would go too. We left Sophie with a neighbor and drove 2 hours to Eastern State University, following GPS to the off-campus apartment complex shown in the photo. The drive was tense, the radio off, each of us lost in our own thoughts as the miles passed. It was nearly midnight when we arrived, the building pulsing with music from various apartments. Groups of students milled around outside, red cups in hand, laughter carrying through the warm night air. We found apartment 307, Justin Mercer's place according to the directory. Andrew knocked firmly. No answer. He knocked again, louder. The bass from the music inside vibrated through the door. Finally, the door cracked open. A bleary-eyed young man with tousled hair peered out. Yeah? He looked barely older than Madison, despite being in college. I'm looking for my daughter, Madison, Andrew said, his voice tight with restraint. I could see the effort it took for him not to push past the boy immediately. Justin started to close the door. Don't know her. His eyes darted nervously behind him. Andrew shoved his foot in the doorway. I saw her in photos taken here last night. Where is she? His voice rose, drawing attention from people passing in the hallway. Look, man, I don't want trouble. Justin's attempt to close the door was futile against Andrew's determination. Dad? Madison appeared behind Justin, wearing an oversized t-shirt and looking smaller than I remembered. Her makeup was smudged, her hair tangled, the sophisticated facade she usually maintained completely absent. The relief on Andrew's face was palpable. Madison, thank God. We've been worried sick. His anger seemed to drain away at the sight of her, parental concern taking its place. She rolled her eyes, but the gesture lacked her usual confidence. I texted you. I'm fine. She crossed her arms defensively, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. You're 17 and you ran away from home, Andrew said. That's not fine by any definition. His voice was firm, but not unkind. Justin looked between them nervously. You said you were 18. His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. Madison avoided his gaze. I will be. Soon. She sounded younger suddenly, less sure of herself. She's 17? Justin backed away from her. I didn't know that. I swear. He ran his hand through his hair, panic evident in his movements. Andrew ignored him, focusing on Madison. Get your things. We're going home. It wasn't a request. No. She crossed her arms. I'm staying here with Justin. But her voice wavered, lacking conviction. Justin shook his head rapidly. No, I'm not getting involved in this. I don't date high schoolers. I could lose my scholarship. He moved further into the apartment, distancing himself from the situation. Madison's face crumpled. But you said, that was before I knew you were underage, Justin interrupted. And before I knew you lied about everything else. His tone was dismissive. Any affection he might have felt clearly evaporated. What do you mean? Madison demanded. She looked suddenly vulnerable, the confident facade completely gone. Justin ran a hand through his hair. Your roommate called looking for you. She told me about the court case, the stolen ring, faking an injury, said you've been lying to everyone. His disgust was evident, his previous attraction replaced by wariness. Madison whirled toward us. You told Tiffany about court? Her accusation was automatic, deflecting blame as she always did. We didn't tell anyone, I said, but the truth has a way of coming out. The hallway light cast harsh shadows across her face, highlighting how young and lost she looked. Madison's eyes filled with tears, but for once they seemed genuine. I have nowhere to go now. The admission seemed to cost her, her voice small and defeated. You have home, Andrew said quietly. You've always had home. He held out his hand to her, an offer rather than a demand. The drive back was silent. Madison sat in the back seat, staring out the window, occasionally wiping her eyes. The headlights of passing cars briefly illuminated her face, revealing an expression I'd never seen before, genuine remorse mixed with fear. When we pulled into Vanessa's driveway, she didn't move. I don't want to go in there, she whispered. Mom's going to freak out. She looked at the house with apprehension, the porch light casting a yellow glow on the front steps. Andrew sighed. She was worried about you. We all were. He turned to look at her, his expression gentle despite everything. Can I? Madison hesitated. Can I stay with you guys tonight? Just tonight? The request was tentative, uncertain. Andrew looked at me questioningly. I nodded slightly. After everything, I couldn't turn her away when she finally seemed vulnerable enough to change. Okay, he said, but we're calling your mother to let her know you're safe. He reached for his phone, already dreading the conversation. At home, Sophie was still awake despite the late hour. She hugged Madison tightly, surprising all of us. Don't ever do that again, she said fiercely. I thought something terrible happened to you. Her small arms wrapped around Madison's waist, her face pressed against her sister's shoulder. Madison looked stunned by her sister's reaction. I'm sorry, she mumbled. The words seemed to surprise her as much as they did us. That night, I heard Madison crying in the guest room. I paused outside her door, debating whether to go in. The soft sounds of her sobs were muffled but unmistakable. Before I could decide, Andrew appeared beside me. I should talk to her, he said. His eyes were tired but determined. I squeezed his hand. We should talk to her. This was a moment that could define our future as a family. I wouldn't let him face it alone. Madison was sitting cross-legged on the bed, her face blotchy from crying. She looked up as we entered, immediately defensive. Come to gloat? She asked bitterly. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, looking young younger than I'd ever seen her. No, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. We came to make sure you're okay. The mattress dipped under my weight, the sheets cool beneath my hands. She laughed harshly. I'm fantastic. My boyfriend dumped me, my friends are spreading rumors about me, and I humiliated myself in court. Everything's great. The sarcasm was familiar, but the despair beneath it was new. Andrew sat on her other side. Madison, we need to talk about what happens next. His voice was gentle but firm. What's there to talk about? I'm grounded forever, right? She picked at a loose thread on the comforter, not meeting our eyes. This goes beyond grounding, Andrew said. The judge ordered therapy and community service. And there's the matter of restitution. He laid out the consequences clearly, without anger. Madison's shoulders slumped. I don't have any money. The fight seemed to drain out of her, leaving only exhaustion. We know, I said. That's why we're going to help you find a job. I reached out cautiously, touching her hand. She didn't pull away. She looked at me suspiciously. Why would you help me? After everything I did to you. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup long since cried away. Because that's what family does, I said simply. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The night air was cool through the open window, carrying the scent of spring flowers. For the first time, Madison seemed to really look at me, not as an enemy or an intruder, but as a person. I'm sorry, she said quietly. About the ring. About everything. The words were simple, but seemed to come from somewhere genuine. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. There was still defensiveness in her posture, still resentment in her eyes, but it was a start. A tiny crack in the wall she'd built between us. A small opening where understanding might eventually grow. The next few weeks were a delicate balance. Madison started therapy twice a week. She got a part-time job at a local coffee shop to begin paying restitution. She split her time between our house and Vanessa's, though the tension at her mother's was palpable. Vanessa still blamed us for the court case, still enabled Madison's worst behaviors. The contrast between the two households became increasingly apparent, even to Madison. One evening, I found Madison sitting on our back porch, staring at her phone. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Everything okay? I asked, sitting beside her on the steps. The wood was still warm from the day's heat. She showed me her screen. College application status. Deferred. They found out about the court case, she said dully. Someone sent them the records. Her shoulders were slumped in defeat. My heart sank. Madison, I'm sorry. Despite everything, I hadn't wanted this for her. It wasn't you? She looked at me searchingly, doubt clear in her expression. We would never do that. I met her gaze steadily, wanting her to see the truth. She nodded slowly, believing me. My therapist says I need to take responsibility for my actions, that this is a consequence of my choices. She sounded like she was trying to convince herself as much as inform me. She's right, I said, but it's not the end of the world. There are other colleges, other opportunities. A firefly blinked in the gathering dusk, its light briefly illuminating the space between us. Why are you being nice to me? She asked suddenly. After everything I did? The question seemed to come from somewhere genuine, a real desire to understand. I thought about it. Because holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you, and because I see who you could become if given the chance. The honesty felt right, necessary for whatever relationship we might build. 2 days later, I came home to find a small box on the kitchen counter with my name on it. Inside was a silver charm bracelet with a single charm, a tiny ring. The note read, I can't replace what I took, but I can promise to do better. Madison. The bracelet wasn't expensive, the charm clearly from a craft store rather than a jeweler. It wasn't my grandmother's ring. It wasn't even real silver. But the gesture meant more than any expensive jewelry ever could. I put it on immediately, the metal cool against my wrist, the tiny ring charm catching the light as I moved. Madison's 18th birthday came and went. We had a small celebration at our house. Nothing extravagant, just cake and presents. She seemed surprised when I handed her a gift, the wrapped package sitting awkwardly in her hands, as if she wasn't sure she deserved it. It's not much, I said as she unwrapped the leather-bound journal, but I thought you might need somewhere to put your thoughts. The leather was soft, the pages thick and creamy, waiting for her words. Thank you, she said, running her fingers over the embossed cover, for this, and for not giving up on me when you had every reason to. Her voice was quiet, sincere in a way I hadn't heard before. 6 months after the court case, Andrew and I finally set a wedding date. We'd put it off during the turmoil, unsure if our relationship could withstand the strain, but we'd emerged stronger, more honest with each other. The date we chose was in spring, when the cherry blossoms would be in full bloom, nature's reminder that beauty can follow even the harshest seasons. I have a question, I said to Madison one afternoon as we were folding laundry together, a chore she now did without complaint. The domestic scene would have been unimaginable months earlier. Would you be one of my bridesmaids? I tried to keep my tone casual, not wanting to pressure her. She froze, a towel half folded in her hands. Are you serious? Her expression was guarded, suspicious of a trick or trap. Completely, but only if you want to. I continued folding, giving her space to process the invitation. She was quiet for a moment. I don't deserve it. The admission was soft, almost whispered. It's not about deserving, I said. It's about moving forward. I placed a folded shirt in the basket, waiting for her response. The day before the wedding, Madison knocked on our bedroom door. She held out a small velvet box. I've been saving from my job, she said. I wanted to get this back to you before the wedding. Her hands trembled slightly as she offered the box. I opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a ring, not my grandmother's, but a similar vintage style. The gold band was delicate, the small diamonds arranged in a pattern that echoed the original. It's not the same one, Madison said quickly. That one was gone for good, but the pawn shop owner helped me find something similar. I know it can't replace what I took, but I hugged her, cutting off her words. After a moment's hesitation, she hugged me back. Thank you, I whispered. The gesture meant more than the ring itself ever could. The wedding was small and perfect. Andrew wore his father's cufflinks. Sophie was our flower girl, beaming as she scattered rose petals along the aisle, and Madison stood beside me as a bridesmaid, her smile genuine as she handed me my bouquet. The spring breeze carried the scent of cherry blossoms, the sunlight filtering through the trees in dappled patterns across the grass. I wore the vintage ring Madison had given me on my right hand. On my left, Andrew placed a new ring, one that would start its own history, its own legacy. As we exchanged vows, I caught Madison's eye. She gave me a small nod, an acknowledgement of how far we'd come. Some wounds never fully heal. Some trust can never be completely restored. But as I looked at my new family, complicated, imperfect, and real, I knew we'd found something worth fighting for. Not a fairy tale ending, just a new beginning.